Hello, everybody. Welcome to our panel called Sharing Grief in Community and Songs, the dying tradition of home vigil in Poland. My name is Anja Franczak. I'm here with a whole bunch of other women from our collective called the Institute of the Good Death, in Polish, Instytut Dobrej Śmierci. We are an initiative that started last year. In our initiative, there are around 60 people, and we are an interdisciplinary group of people who have to do with the subject of death and grief in their work. And in our group, there are people who are researchers, journalists, funeral industry experts, medical experts, artists. So it's a very different variety of perspectives. And we all want to contribute to normalizing the subject of death and grief in the public debate. So we organize panels and workshops and meetings, and we participate in events such as, for example, lifting the lid. So we are really glad that we can be part of this event. And we would like to present you a subject that is repeatedly coming back into our discussions within our group, which is the topic of different traditions around death and grief in Poland, and the question how to save these traditions, or how to translate them and transform them into contemporary needs of our society today. And I would like to introduce three researchers who have prepared a presentation for you tonight. Aleksandra Kurowska-Susdorf, Anja Jurkiewicz, and Marta Tarnowska. Each of them is an expert for a certain region in Poland, because it's difficult to say there is a Polish tradition of, for example, funeral songs or funeral rituals, because it's very different in each region. That's an important thing to remember. So the first one I would like to pass the word to is Aleksandra, who will tell us about the traditions in the Kashubia region. And all the traditions we're going to talk about today, they are around the particular time in between the death of a person and the funeral of a person. So the focus is actually not on funeral rites, but on different traditions around the wake, around the vigil, when people spend time with the dead person. And these traditions are slowly disappearing, and we are looking for ways how to find and preserve the value of these traditions. This is where I stop talking for now, and I hand over to Aleksandra.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you, Anja, for the introduction. This is very true what you said. It's really hard to speak about Poland as one unit. So we have to actually accept that because of many wars, partitions, and conflicts, there are huge differences, and we can see it in at least three border parts, like where the Russians and Austria was. So it would not be professional to talk about the whole country itself. So that's why we chose to do it this way. I will tell you more about the northern part of Poland. I will show it in a second on the presentation. But before the very first slide you're going to see in a second, I will ask Maria to show it for us. Is showing the vision of deathbed. Anja just said that we talked about what's happening between death and funeral. I would like to extend it a bit for a deathbed situation. Actually, what was happening with the spirit, with the family, with the whole community. And it's also worth to remember that we are talking in Poland, about northern part of Poland in a broader context. This is European context, and starting from medieval times, we were all in Ars Moriendi movement. So do not try to focus on something unique. Like, we will not probably tell you that what we have here is unique. It's not unique, but it's specific, and it's worth to keep it in mind. So the ideas we are going to tell you about would be just specific for our region. So Maria, if you could click on the next picture, so we will see, this is the image from Bologna Cemetery. This is like typical deathbed situation. I'm going to tell you what the researchers like Friedrich Lorenz or Adam Fischer about 100 years ago wrote about northern part of Poland. But again, you will see many similarities in all European movement, which was embedded in Ars Moriendi. So saying goodbye to the spirit was very much connected with the beliefs. We know that the deathbed situation there was a huge tension because there was a fight between good and evil. And people who were with the dying person, mostly women in Kashubia, they were actually supporting the angels, this good part of this fight. By praying and telling the rosary, lighting the candle. The candle was put in the hand of the dying person, of the moribund. That's what we call him. And there were some signs. We call it nuncius mortis in Latin. There were some signs which were showing that the person is going to die. Kashubian people believe that you have to observe nature. So if there was a mole digging the holes towards your house, you should be careful. If the moribund, the dying person, was watching his palms, his hands, it meant that the death is coming. Also, dreams were very significant. So if the dying person had dreams connected with deceased, or when he dreamt about his teeth, for example, that was also connected with something which is going to happen. So those nuncius mortis, so the signs of death, were quite typical and also vivid here in the Kashubia region. So as I said, it's worth to keep it in mind. Do not focus on something unique, but rather specific. And moving from to another slide, you will see that the big connection, it's just a picture of my grandma and my daughter. The difference is not 90 years old between them exactly. And this was a very, very powerful situation where two words were meeting. It was an obligation, the family obligation, to be on time, to say goodbye, to say I'm sorry, just before the spirit would leave the body. So it's not only dying; it's the process itself, which was really meaningful. And before the person died, everyone was involved. Why I'm emphasizing this because until the funeral and then later on the consolation, the society itself is present. It's never the person itself alone, isolated. It was the society. It changed a lot due to medicalization. The right of separation, according to Victor Turner, for example, began already in the hospital. In older times, it happened on the deathbed. The separation started. We are talking about three rites. First was separation. We were separating slowly from the sick person and then dying person. The separation finished when the person died. The moment when the spirit stayed with us until the funeral is the marginalization part. So the spirit is with us, but it's something between and betwixt. Or Heidegger would call it, it's the state of Zwischen, the Zwischensein. So this is something very vivid also in this culture. And finally, aggregation was the moment when the spirit left the earth and went to heaven or for the final judgment. So this is those stages, they're also vivid in this culture. Okay, Marek, can I ask you to put another slide? Just to be more specific, now you can see where Poland is exactly, and where the arrow shows this is Kashubia. So the northern part, it's again important to keep in mind that Kashubian people, an ethnic minority group with their own language, it's a separate language since 2005, declared by European Union. Those people had never country themselves for their own, but they had there was a nation. There was a moving tribe already in this part of Europe, visible in the 6th century. But Kashubs were also, and are until now, border people. What means being a border people? So you are always on the border of tradition, culture, and nothing is clear. Nothing is clear. There are some influences from German culture, from Scandinavian culture, from Polish culture as well. So as I said, this is heart of Europe, so all things are very similar. Okay, on the next slide, you are going to see Kashubia itself. So you can see the Baltic Sea, Hel Peninsula, there's Gdańsk on the right, and the arrows show where my PhD research was taken. There were usually villages where the vast majority of inhabitants speak fluent Kashubian. And being Kashubian meant also being very deeply embedded in folks culture. So your heart was closer to the village culture than to the city culture. It's very important because if you study Arié, Michel Vauvel, whichever thanatologist, they always claim that if you are a village person, you are always closer to nature. So it's easier for you to understand the cycle of life. And what's more, when you are on the deathbed situation, you would rather invite a priest than a doctor because you are expecting to die. You know it's coming. So Arié would also claim that people who live closer to nature, they experience nuntius mortis. So they really feel that they are dying. Those who are in a hurry, so they are like more city people, it's much harder for them. So this is also important. Talking about Kashubian, like people closer to the village culture. Okay, can I have another slide, please? Maybe it doesn't say much, but actually in reality it does. This is one family album, and on one page actually you have the crucial, the most important family event. There is a wedding on one. There is a grandson who goes to kindergarten for the first time, and a funeral. And it shows again a lot. This is just one of life elements, so it's not excluded. Death comes as birth come and as weddings come. This is just part of life. So it was something typical in this culture. Each situation had its own place accepted by society. Okay, can I see another one, please? So now we are coming slowly to what's happening when someone dies. So there is a deathbed situation, the person is passing away, and when we know that he or she died, we can open the windows, let the spirit go, and we can start preparing the body and preparing the house. Why? Because as I said, according to scientists who work on rituals, like Emil Durkheim as well, the whole sequence of ritual is really significant. The marginal stage begins, which means that we are all observed by the spirit all the time. So we need to keep the sequence. Why? Because the ritual, according to scientists, has a huge role to keep the society together, not to drown in the chaos. And one of the researchers, William Hall, said that ritual is like a comb, like a brush, which treats single people as messy hair. Sounds brutal, but it was very helpful for the societies in when they had to face or cope with a tragedy. So what happens? That the person is dead. The body needs to be washed. The person who does it is really gentle. He talks to the body. He talks to the spirit. He knows the spirit is nearby and he's observing him. He's preparing the body, and everything is magical here. So the sponge which the person is using has to be kept, because later on it's very useful. It can heal, and it's very often used by the local healer. What you see in the picture is covered window. So not to disturb the spirit. We know that spirit does not like hustle. That's not like when it's when the music goes, when people are more concentrated on themselves. And again, it's a time of tension, so we cover everything which can reflect our face. First of all, not to be concentrated on ourselves, but the magical element is that you could see the reflection of the deceased in the mirror, and that would mean that you will die soon as well. So everything was covered, TV, everything which reflected anything. The radio was stopped as well, and from that moment, so from the death until the funeral, the time does not count. So we when you come back to Victor Turner theory, it's a liminal stage. So everything stopped. Okay, Maria, can I have another picture? This is all taken in our local neighborhood. The clock also stops. Again, the time does not count, and now everything is concentrated on the spirit. So people should not take care too much about their job, their duties. It's now only moment to prepare the spirit to go away. So we are focused only on the spirit. It's also very interesting to keep it in mind that death shows the most important cultural values. So it's very transparent for everyone that in this time only the good of the spirit counts. Okay, we should let him go slowly in a typical sequence for the ritual. The tension is accepted. It will not last for a long time, but now we have to accept it somehow. Okay, can I have another slide, please? Now what's happening with the body? So in Kashubia, we called this the eve or the vigil or the wake, we call it pustonoc, which means the empty night. Actually, in the history, empty nights. It lasted for 3 nights before the funeral. And how was it organized? So usually in the house of the deceased person, the coffin was displayed. This picture was taken in 1903, so this is the oldest one I have. And the deceased person is wearing white. In that time, this was the symbol of grief, the white color. And there was nothing for men like trousers. It was like a big long dress. It's not very typical to have a deceased outside, so please do not connect it with the tradition in Kashubia. But again, it shows us that this was a very significant moment for the whole family and the community. Probably the casket was taken out to the garden to take a proper picture. So we can consider that the house was too small or maybe too dark. But what counts here is the presence of children. Children were always very close to the casket. Everything counted here. So they had to touch the deceased. Sometimes they were forced to kiss the body just to make sure that the person died, but also for kids to understand what the dead person, what does it mean actually? So it's not moving, he's cold and so on. This was very, very important in the culture to organize it in this way. Behind this person, behind the casket, you can see the altar. We'll see more pictures of this, but Have a look what's on the altar. Always candles, always some flowers, and there is also a cross nearby. Yeah, but we'll come to it in a second. It was very also important to sprinkle the body with the holy water regularly, every half an hour. Why? Because again, this moment when the spirit is with us, it's a moment of profanum, and we need to come to sacrum part. Profanum means that we are afraid of the body, we are afraid of the spirit. We respect him, her, but we are afraid, and we need to do everything that is planned to do as a ritual says. Okay, can I have another picture, please? This picture is also from older times. It's more than 70 years old, and it's very important again that we see that the casket was located in the center of the room. People should be able to surround the casket to see the body from every side. The 3 nights singing of vigils or eves were important because it also made everyone sure that the person is dead, that there is nothing like maybe sickness or lethargy, or maybe that the person just sleeps. It was very important to be able to observe it. So you have to be able to come from every angle to see if the face changes. The face could change, like if the deceased went red, it could mean that he will be a vampire after the funeral. And then some specific things had to be done, like they should place a brick inside, or they should make small crosses and put it under arms. Sometimes they should put a prayer to his hand, but without the word amen at the end, so he could repeat it all the time. In the north of Kashubia, so near Hell Peninsula, they were also throwing seeds inside, so the spirit would have a job to do, collect the seeds. So there were different things which really needed to be done, just to make sure that the spirit stays there, does not haunt us after all. Okay, can I have another picture? Here is something different, and it made me feel really confused. 99% of pictures from which are like 100 years old show that the casket is always placed in the center of the room, and I just explained you why. In this case, it's just in the corner, and after a very long interview, I found out that in the situation when the room was really small, and the deceased should have a separate room, so you should not sleep with the deceased in the same room. It should have a separate room. They had to put it this way. But the picture is very old and shows that not everyone could afford the same situation. But have a look what's underneath the casket. There are lots of plants. It was very, very important to keep it this way for the body. 3 days in summer, it caused lots of problems. So in former times, they were changing the plants just to keep the room fresh. They were bringing water, fresh water, and it was usually done by kids. That was also important. They were involved in the ritual and somehow tamed what death means. We'll come back to this picture later to show you what was happening among Kashubian people who emigrated to Canada, how similar it was. Okay, can we go to another picture, please? This picture is one of my favorites. In the center of the picture, there is a small girl, and she has a problem. I mean, probably that there is a bad smell, and she's holding her nose in this way. We also know that the children participation in such rituals were always very much connected with senses. So when adults were taking care of the deceased, observing what's happening, praying, sprinkling holy water. Kids were just trying to sense what death means. So the learning process is from different perspective, very broad perspective, and it shows also changes. So this picture was taken in the 70s, and it's not at home anymore. It's in the chapel. But what's kept the same is the position of the casket. It's in the center of the chapel, and the green plants nearby, and the candles behind. So this one was kept, but not at home anymore. Okay, can we move, please? Okay, we come back to early 80s, and this is the only picture which I found. On the right, you can see a plate with holy water. So this was used very often to sprinkle the body, to make sure that the sacrum stage will appear. And now we will come back to what's happening behind the head of the deceased. There's a Virgin Mother there and the cross. And this was very significant as well, to keep this distance between the head of the deceased and the altar, home altar, so that in this place we could have a place for the spirit. No one could trespass this way, no one could go there. This was just the place for the spirit. So everyone kept it in mind, to keep the space and to respect the spirit in this way as well. We know from the interviews that some kids who were not forced to kiss the deceased or touch the hand were at least forced to touch the shoe, or the shoe of the deceased, just to make sure that all senses work: smelling, seeing, touching, and so on. This was very vital in organizing the ritual itself. Okay, let's move. Okay, maybe one more thing I will add. Before the casket was closed, everyone could put something inside. Usually those were things very important for the deceased. Could be cigarettes, could be small bottle of alcohol. In my family, we know that there were artificial teeth put inside. Of course, rosary, but also very private things. This was in the past, but we know that nowadays people put sometimes mobile phones as well, and different things. But this was kept, and people used to do it very often in Kashubia. What you can see here, and it was also visible in the last picture, that the social distance is very important, and used to be very important as well in the past. During the vigil or pusta noc, people were very close to each other, actually touching themselves, like elbow to elbow. And this is the moment when people are singing. So the deceased is either nearby the table or in the second room. But still, the distance is very small, and it's according to Edward Hall theory about proxemics, that the closer you are to another person, the more emotional the situation and more educational the situation for you is. This is a typical Kashubia in Polish context vigil, which means that only men are singing. They are sitting in front of themselves. They have hymnals. The first that were used here come from 1862, written by Keller. They only had words, no melody. So when people used to sing from one village, they usually knew the same melody. There was one leader of the singing, and he started singing, and this was a responsorial way of singing. So the first part of the table on the right side, they started, and the other part they were finishing the one of the verses, and so on. There is a small girl in the picture. She was actually assisting. She was helping to find the right page of the hymnal. What's also important is what you can see on the table. To keep the spirit, to keep the singing, there needed to be food and also alcohol. Alcohol was very helpful to keep singing. You have to know that in traditional Pustanot sequence, people used to sing from 7, 8 p.m. until the morning. Then it changed and they were only singing until 12. And nowadays we have only empty evenings. So it's up to 12 and next day we have a funeral. So this changed. Now in COVID times, it's not possible even, but it changed from, it reduced actually from free vigils until 1 and only evening as well. Okay, let's continue. This is the picture from Canada. So in 1858, Kashubians, a big group of Kashubian people, emigrated from southern Kashubia and went to Canada. Because of Prussian partition, they had no chance to get the land here, and they were promised to get a free land in Canada, so the big group moved there. They brought the same tradition with them. They brought hymnals with them, but because the situation was different, they could not share it like only men singing, for example, not enough men actually. So they accepted that women are singing on one side of the table and men on the other side of the table. Have a look, this picture is from 1965. This is one of the last Pustonots, last singing vigil. Very old hymnals. They treated them like a holy books actually. And this continued for 100 years after the immigration, and then disappeared, moved to funeral homes, and then slowly disappeared. But some of the things repeated, like for example, covering mirrors was the same, and many others, but I will move to it in a second. Okay, let's move to another one. Okay, so now we finished Pustanot. So the vigil is over. It's early morning. In tradition, in Kashubian tradition, people used to sing the last night before funeral until 5 a.m. They had a short break to go back to their farms to milk the cows, prepare food for animals, so they could be ready for the funeral. Then they came back to the deceased house, and they were saying goodbye, farewell to the deceased. The ritual was present still. So it's called in Latin contraria facere, which means that everything had to be in some kind of reverse. So they were trying to implement chaos, artificial chaos, to show that this person is not longer going to be with us. So what was done? The chairs, stools where the deceased used to sit had to be turned over. The animals had to be wake up. If the farmer had beehives, bees, they had to be also woke up. Nothing could stay the same. So they need to change something in the surrounding, and everything which was connected with the deceased person had to be somehow woken up in this sense. And the bells were ringing, and the bells were also a very significant element because they were supposed to chase away the demons. Still time of tension. Still we have to be careful, and we have to pay attention to what we are doing. So have a look also in the picture. There are horses, horse carriage taking the casket, and the social distance also changes. So people are not anymore arm to arm. The distance changes a bit. So this is the last moment actually for education. You're not feeling with such a intimate connection. It's changing. Okay, let's have a look to another picture. This had almost 100 years. This was almost 100 years old. This is from the 70s. People carrying the casket. Again, it's quite important because when the Kashubin farmer was rich, then the priest would come to welcome the deceased. If it was not a very significant person, then the people with the casket had to come to the church. So it was very important. Also very important was that everyone should go with the casket at least to the village border. Kashups believe, like many traditional societies, that on the border is a magical place. There are lots of demons and there is a fight between good and bad. So the casket should also go with people nearby just to be protected somehow, to be sure that the spirit will not stay there. We need to take him together to the graveyard. Okay, let's see another one. This is the funeral picture from 2011, and here the distance is even bigger, so it also shows a lot. We are more separated. There are not that many people anymore, but people are still walking together to say goodbye to the deceased. With the sequence is also important. So we start with usually the widow or the widower going in nearby, the family first, and then other relatives coming. So we are almost there. We can almost say goodbye to the spirit, but still we have to be careful what's happening. Okay, let's see another one. So now, as you can see, everyone is celebrating. What happened in the tradition? The moment when the priest said on the funeral, "Ashes to ashes, dust to dust," he gave a sign to the spirit, "It's time for you to go," which means that no one could cry too much. According to tradition, if you cry too much, then the body can stay in the casket in the water. So you will keep the spirit here, and you cannot do it. The profanum moment finishes, you have to let it go. You have to allow the spirit to go to sacrum element. So this liminal stage is over. Try to let it go. So it means that after the funeral, people are free to go, but they should not go home. They should go to the house of the deceased, and there should be a table with food, drinks, put in the same position where the casket used to be 3 days ago. It's very important because this is like the last gift from the deceased. And we believe that if you accept to receive a gift, you accept to stay in a relation forever with the spirit, which means that you accept to have this continuing bond with the spirit. So in the tradition, Kashubian tradition, you should never refuse to join the consolation, the dinner after the funeral. It was your obligation to go there. It was also very often called, also by Arye and other researchers, Carmina Diabolica, this moment, because it started with mourning, with really tough emotions, but it should finish with joy. So the last element of this consolation should be joyful. And why? Because, as I told you at the beginning, death shows the most important cultural values. The most important cultural value for people living close to nature is not death, but life, the cycle of life, which means that those who are left here, they should celebrate life. They should accept to have the continuing bond with the deceased, but they have to keep on moving. They have to let it go. They cannot keep the spirit, so they have to respect the spirit, but try to live. That's why we need food. All ritual researchers claim that food and drinks are really important to keep us alive. So it's really needed to. It's one of joyful elements of life to eat and to taste and to have pleasure from eating. So we know that this meeting actually emphasized the social solidarity. That was crucial. So this was this cultural value which was connected with funeral, with the huge loss, not a worship of dead. It was not time for that. So we stopped the liminal stage. We have to start the clock after the funeral. The spirit is there, and we can start celebrating life again. And okay, can I have another picture? As I told you, that there's still a continuing bond. So this is my grandma's holy corner, where in the corner you can see Virgin Mother pictures and so on, the Pope and so on, but also person who are dead, the deceased from the family. Their pictures. So it's like an altar, but it's not that much connected with Mexican, for example, tradition. Nothing like worship exists here, but it's just the accepting of this continuing bond. And this was very popular in Kashubian traditional houses. Okay, can I have another one? Sometimes there was a problem with a proper ritual sequence. So someone disturbed it somehow by crying, by wrong singing. We know that some of the Kashubian group from Canada thought that if the leader of singing had to go out and someone else started singing, not waiting for him, he could disturb the whole ritual. And if there was not a proper sequence, if someone made something wrong, the spirit can come back. And the picture of the cross, this is actually the graveyard in Kashubia during 1st of November. But the cross here is very important because they believe that if the sequence was broken, the spirit is coming back. And where could you meet the spirit? Of course, during your dreams. So he was coming back while dreaming and saying something to you. You could hear strange noises. During interviews, many older people claimed that they heard something strange. Somebody was knocking the window at night, and lots of creepy stories. But one of the story which repeats even in many books, like the one from Lawrence or Persson, the Professor Persson, says that near crosses, which were are very popular in Kashubia, on the crossings or on the border of the village, there were also always big crosses. You could meet a spirit, and he would talk to you. It's usually in the evening. You don't know the person, but it looks like a person, and he says something to you. And there was a special spell, you should say, to protect yourself, but not many people could say it. In Polish, it's Wszelki duch Pana Boga chwali. But if you did not know the spelling, then the spirit could ask you to pray for him and for her. And it could last many months, just to help him to release, to go up, to start the final judgment and not to come back anymore. So there were situations where you could destroy the ritual, and that's why people were so afraid of doing that, and were doing everything they could just to satisfy the spirit somehow. Okay, let's move to the Canadian context just for a second. Okay, let's move. As I said, let's go to another one. This picture is taken among this emigration group. They moved to Canada 1858. And as I mentioned, they continued the tradition for over 100 years. And the same ideas, bringing the casket outside to take a picture. It should be in family album. It was important element of family life. The whole family with children would take a picture With the casket, we say coffin in Polish context, but here the casket because the upper part was opened. Okay, let's see another picture, just the casket itself. So again, probably not enough space or the bad light inside, but the same idea to have it in the picture. Another idea which was connected with the need of migration. You could not have this contact point, a grave in the cemetery to visit. So people used to take pictures in case they would move again. So if I cannot go to the grave regularly, at least I have a picture. This is my contact point. So this was very popular among the groups who used to emigrate and move more. Okay, let's have a look on the other one. And the times changed. Now we have, I showed you before the original picture from Pusta Noc in Canada, where there were men and women. This is the reconstruction which took place 2014. They tried to show everything as they remember. And now you will also hear in a second there was the songs, the hymns, which were typical for Pusta Noc. But have a look what's on the table. Hymnals, some of them are over 100 years old, very precious for them. There is mint, candies, and cloths, which were very typical. Of course, there was alcohol as well, but they just kept it simple for the means of reconstruction. Behind the people, behind those two men, there was a tiny altar. There was a cross, and again, pictures of the deceased. So they try to reconstruct also this idea of holy corner. And let's have a look another picture, which shows the casket itself. And again, they know it from their childhood that the caskets were always in the corner of the room. So the idea to keep it in the center, to have the altar behind, to respect the place for the spirit, that's gone. And the reason for that is that they probably had really tiny cottages and they could not afford to have a separate room for the deceased. And this corresponds with this picture, which I showed you before, that there were some changes happening. And yeah, but still the idea is very similar. Okay, let's move to the song now, and I will ask Maria to play the 1 minute song from it was recorded in Canada. And what you have to know is that those people do not speak Polish. They speak Kashubian language. This is the 5th generation of the first immigrants. And they sing it in the way they remember it from their childhood. And as I told you at the beginning, they came from different villages. So the melody they remember is much different. So at the end, the leader is explaining that you can hear that everyone has another melody and everyone remembers it in a different way. And that shows a lot, because in the time when they were moving to Canada, there was just words, nothing like a unique melody for the singing. But the tradition was kept for many years, and what they remember from their childhood is it's the memories is much different than those who live here in Kashubia, because they did not understand the words. They couldn't speak Polish, and the songs were in Polish. This mourning Slavic lamentation here in this part of Europe has a very long tradition, but in the 16th century it was replaced by Catholic songs. And by the time when it came to Canada, all songs were in Polish, whereas people spoke Kashubian and English. So actually they were singing something they could not understand in 2nd and 3rd generation, just the melody. Okay, Maria, so does it work? And please listen to the last minute is that the man is explaining that they made a mistake. I mean, not a mistake, but this was the specific memory they had. Okay, so I hope it works. Let's listen to it. Or maybe it will not work, and then you just have to imagine a group of people singing a responsorial song, women and men, and having lots of difficulties to keep the same melody going, but they did their best, and it was a really interesting experience.
I think we will have more sound examples from Anja's and Marta's presentation. So
Okay.
it's a pity that it doesn't work. But was that the last part, Aleksandra? Thank you so much for this really fascinating, also historical overview that you gave, and the all those different layers of the rituals in terms of all senses that are involved: hearing, songs, talking, touching, seeing, smelling. I will now pass on to Anja, who has done a lot of research of how some of these traditions are still alive today in a certain part of Poland. So Anja, I invite you to take over.
Thank you, Anja, and good evening to everyone. I'm glad to be here. Me and Marta, we will be interchanging because we have experiences from different regions, but we also work together a lot in the field of songs accompanying grieving, and so we prepared our presentation together, and it will be just basically explaining some basic notions that are relevant to the topic of singing during the gathering at home. I mean, at home, at the place where the deceased person lived, because this is where everyone, as Aleksandra explained, this is where the vigil takes place, and an important part of the vigil is singing. So we will focus on singing, and we will go through 3 parts. First, we will talk a bit about how it worked in rural communities in Poland throughout recent centuries. I mean, in the Catholic context already, but it went on for a couple of centuries like this. And then the second part will be some reflections on how the situation is now, and how the singing is transformed into something else. And the last part will be some even more unobvious forms of continuing, but also adapting this ritual practice of singing together in a form of lamentation in different contexts. So by means of an introduction, I will say a couple of words on the material that I'm going to present. It comes from research that I did together with a team of friends and researchers and practitioners also of this kind of singing in Polish, of singing of funeral songs, which actually I will use the term funeral songs because it's short, but the term most commonly used by the singers themselves was songs for the souls of the dead. So it's pieśni za zmarłych or pieśni. So it was literally songs for the dead, or also it's sometimes called songs sung by the dead. And this is the key word here, because this is the proximity of the body also, and of the person still. That's also a crucial part of experiencing this situation and of processing death through this experience. So I'm really happy that Aleksandra spoke a lot about the vigil and gave, I mean, of course, as she said, it's not the same in all parts of Poland. So there will be some differences, but we will not get into that because enough, I mean, for us, the level of detail that we need will keep us in the impression that it's actually quite similar everywhere. And also an important thing is that the song texts, the lyrics, they were passed like from they were not passed on like typical folklore material, which is also means that the lyrics were not written down, but they were passed on orally. No, the songs were, as Aleksandra said, they were printed in hymnals, and they were also distributed by the church and by some intellectual centers connected to church. So like the Keller hymnal from Pelplin. So, so the texts actually throughout Poland, they don't differ so much. It's the variations of melodies that differ, because these were passed in an oral transmission intergenerationally. And we will talk about it a little bit later. Now I will share with you, sorry, I'm doing the sharing myself, so I will first share the map showing which region I'm referring to when I'm talking about funeral songs and my experience with them. So I hope you can see it. Yes, I think you should. So in this map, you can see, for reference, there is Warsaw, and there is this region east from Warsaw, and east-north from Warsaw. So this is, we refer to it as Eastern Mazovia, but it's also the borderland with Podlasia already. And this is quite a vast area where we did some ethnographic fieldwork in the process of searching for songs and singers, mostly. First of all, singers. So we started this project in 2015. It was realized by a team of 7 people, and it was also realized with some financial support from public funds, and it was coordinated by an NGO, Stowarzyszenie Katedra Kultury. So the project was called Pieśń do śmierci, which could be translated as songs for death or songs accompanying death also. And here you can see on this map there we marked villages where the white spots, the white dots are villages that we visited, but we didn't find any living singers, active singers that we could even speak to. And the yellow ones are dots are villages where we knew that there are at least a few singers. And also there are marks in the shape of a person. So those are singers that we met, and we talked to them. We learned about the practice and how it was passed on. So we did interviews, ethnographic interviews, and also made recordings of the singing itself. And so we started this in 2015, and then we developed the project in the following years. So it's an ongoing process still. So we still go there sometimes, because as I mentioned, we are not only researching this topic, but we are also practitioners of singing. So we an important part of our presence there was not only to learn how it works, but also to learn how to sing and practice singing with the singers. So we will have some also examples of that later. And now I would like to just say a few things about like a follow-up to what Aleksandra said. The singing, but I will concentrate on the singing. It was an activity that all the neighbors could participate in, and they would usually join singing. The singing took place usually around the body, or sometimes the body was in the next room, and the singers were gathered around the table, sitting and singing. And it was a very open situation, so anyone could join at any level, with any level of knowledge of the songs. It was expected that everyone would join, if only they feel like this. But there were also some leaders, of course. The singing was led by skillful and experienced singers. And in the past, they used to be men more often. But by the time we did our research, we didn't meet so many male singers. Actually, now it seems like women took over the leading of this practice to a great extent. And just as a point of reference, we met singers born between 1920 and 1960 even. So also we met a variety of singers also in different ages. But most of them were women, and most of them sang in groups, and we also met them and experienced their singing in groups. So this is the context. It's and an important part, of course, there's the layer of the text itself and the content that deal directly with death in those songs, and they are often texts from with Baroque poetic provenience, so they have a very strong metaphorics and imagery, very direct and material and corporeal also, with sometimes great detail, sometimes showing images, building images of decay and the processes that the body undergoes after death. And this is also a tradition that is very influenced by the Catholic doctrine. So it's they also had some functions. Singing those songs also had some function of reinforcing faith and encouraging prayer and encouraging reflection and encouraging godly life and discouraging from sin, but also by images of hell and the Last Judgment. So this is also present in the songs. But for us, from our perspective, I would say that the most interesting thing also in thinking about dealing with grief is actually the embodied experience of singing, of participating actively in the act of singing, and also just stemming from the fact of just being in this room filled with voices. I think that the songs were an important channel and also a tool for a channel of communication between people who are grieving the loss of someone they knew, but also of communication with the soul and with other souls also, because every funeral actually was, every death, every vigil was also referring to all the previous losses, obviously. And also the purpose and the function of the songs was also not only to grieve this particular loss, but also to encourage reflection on death in general, and also to think of and to remember other people who passed before, and also to make people think about their own death. And a very important part of this experience is, as I said, the sensory part, and the sensory layer of the singing, I would say, is what maybe it's the strongest part of this experience, because now it would be different if we met not online. If we met in person, we would probably, me and Marta, we would just propose to everyone to sing together. So we would bring lyrics of one song. We would show you the melody for a couple of strophes, and then we would ask you to join, to experience yourselves what it is like, because it's quite. It was obvious, and it was known from a variety of social contexts in rural communities back then. But now most of us don't have this experience, or not so much, of just singing together in a very large group using an open voice. So this is not bel canto, soft and smooth voice. This is using the voice that is similar to speech level voice, and also with all of its imperfections, as you will also hear in some of the recordings that we want to present. This is also there. So it's a very embodied kind of singing, and you can feel the flesh in the song. And we think, as we were talking about what we want to share in this wonderful festival, we were thinking exactly about how the physical sensations related to singing in a big group of people actually are a tool for building a sense of community, and making present this state of communitas, as using the referring also to Victor Turner's theory. So this is the state of transformation. This is what Aleksandra also referred to as the time when there is no time. And singing is an important, and this physical also sensations are an important part of it. So this is about the sound that is generated between people who are very close to each other in a space closed by walls. So the acoustics really reinforces, and it can even get quite claustrophobic sometimes with the volume of the voices and the volume of the room. It's really resonating extremely strongly, and everyone present can feel the vibrations and the resonance just permeating through their bodies. So, and it's even more so when the person joins into singing. So then they also experience the interaction between their own voice and the voices of all other people. So there is sometimes dissonance. So there is then a special kind of, I don't know, like shakiness also, even in the body.
Tension, special kind of tension, right?
Tension.
I mean, yeah, sort of. I'd call.
Mm-hmm. The tension also, because it must be said that this is very different in sound from some other more relaxed occasions. This is a ritual singing, so this has this ritual tension also in the voice. This is why the voices used to be very loud. And okay, I will pass it on to Marta in a minute. Just also 2 quotes from singers that I met. They used to describe situations of singing in this kind of gathering where there would be, for example, 30 very, very highly skilled singers with very powerful voices, and even 30 male singers sometimes. And they described the sensations and the effect of it as, for example, that the roof of the house would go up from this volume and this tension of the voices. And yes, the voices were, the sound was permeating everything, and everything was vibrating in that room. And there are also some images of one singer told us that in the times of singing by oil lamps, the lamps would often just go out. So the light went out. The flame was put out by the voices of the singers. So Marta, is it now a good time to show the recordings from Kadzidło area?
Let's try that.
So this will be a passage to another region. I'm stopping sharing, and so those recordings will be from Kurpie, where Marta was spent a lot of time.
We're gonna hear some music from Krowia village in the Kadzidło, near Kadzidło in the Kurpie region. It's an hour drive from the place where Anja showed. It's an hour drive north from there, so it's quite near. And I'd like you to hear this recording, this field recording of a group of singers from this village. They're not professional singers; they just gathered to sing this funeral song. I'm sorry, my dog was okay, so now I'd like to share that with you. Not necessarily the screen, only the sound.
It stopped.
Yes, I can see that, but I don't understand why. Okay, so maybe let's take it as a sign that for the moment this example was enough, and I'll come back to you. So what I wanted to tell you about is the experience I had, and why actually I started to do what I do, which is running an NGO with people who go to the singers, learn those songs, and think how to adapt them right now, how to revive them, what to do with them. And why I think this is sort of an important experience to preserve, to have, because what is this whole process of 3 days of being together, singing together, eating together? What does it do to us? How does it help us to overcome or to deal with our grieving process? And I wanted to like tell you about an experience. I had a family experience because part of my family is from the village and I live in the city. So my first experiences of dealing with death was actually experiencing my grandfather's death in the village, and I recall all the village gathering there to be there, to sing together, to weep together. There was still a row of weepers over there, and for 7-year-old me, it was an overwhelming experience, and it was full of tension, but this tension was somehow resolved. And what came after that, during the feast that is ending the whole process, is rather the feeling of joy, to tell the truth, to the feeling of all the bonds strengthen, and sort of like it is a really transformative event. And when I later on in my mature life experienced some funerals in the city, I felt like, whoa, this is not enough. Like, is it over already? And I felt like I didn't experience it properly, and my grieving process was much more complicated after those losses I had in the cities. So I went to the villages to look for those singers and to learn from them, to experience this kind of way of expressing sorrow and grief together in a community. And it really, I felt it really helped me, and it was really a healing experience to be able to learn about all that. So I felt, what was that I lacked in those city experiences that those village experiences actually gave me to help me go through this grieving process. And I understood that that first and most importantly, this bodily experience of dealing with the dead person, of dealing with the dead body, and understanding the reality in this very moment between the death of the person and the funeral itself, is vital to cope, to really believe it happened, to understand that the person is not alive anymore and won't be there. It is a crucial experience. And what is more, the whole community that gathers around you and is there in a very supportive way for you, it's very necessary for you to be able to cope with that extreme experience of loss and the transformation of your reality. So, so I think that there is a huge, I don't know, wisdom in those practices, but at the same time, there are many aspects that are just very difficult to deal with and to think about adaptation in the modern times, because those lyrics are often not acceptable for us anymore in terms of values, or in terms of our sensitivity to subjects as anti-Semitism, which is very present in the Keller's book mentioned before. So we are thinking very actively how to deal with that and how to transform that. But I already went a bit forward, I think. So Anja, maybe I could give you back the voice, but maybe before I do that, I could play some music so we could hear a bit. Maybe I'll play the music from Podlasie region because it will be easier technically. And then we will talk for a while. How does it look today? How those gatherings are they continuing or are they disappearing? What are the factors influencing the situation, and so on? And then we pass on to the actual movements that somehow are inspired by those traditions. So I'd like you to hear some music. So I share a screen with you to, but the audio is crucial, so you don't have to see my screen. Wait a second.
Zmarły człowiecze, z Tobą się nie żegnamy. Przyjmij dar słowny, który Ci składamy. Przyjmij dar słowny, który Ci składamy. I odrzuconej winy, odbyć przyjaciół, sąsiadów, rodziny, odbyć przyjaciół, sąsiadów, rodziny. Co matka Twa była, teraz dzień stragi, niedawno żyła. Teraz dzień stragi, niedawno żyła. Tak droga
Okay, so
Like,
I'd like to,
just a very short question, because listening to the
yeah.
song, it feels so difficult to interrupt it, actually, because it has this mantra-like quality. So what we have
Yeah.
heard, are these actually repetitions of fragments, or does the song last for, how long does it last?
No, it lasts like 4 minutes 22 seconds last this particular song.
But
But there is this mantra quality, and there is a repetition of each verse. I mean, like, or of the each second of the pair of verses normally, and there are 3 voices. That's why sometimes it's like. And they take breaths in different moments, so there is a continuous sound. So yeah, it has this mantra like quality. And this particular song was from the northeastern part of Poland. And I'd like to play a little fragments of from another region, from Podlasie, from Ukrainian minority that lives there, from ladies from Dobrowoda village, and so maybe a minute more, and you can just see the differences.
I think it might also be a good moment to say, for those who don't understand Polish, that the song that was played is because the songs take different standpoint. Some of them are sung in the name of the deceased person. So it's for example, I say goodbye to the world, I say goodbye to my home, I say goodbye to my family, I say goodbye to all the animals. This is this comes
That was
from
the case of
the
the
most
first.
like the most widespread song, Żegnam Cię mój świecie wesoły, which was played as the first recording. And it also has the element of passing time, because there are hours, like every strophe is ended by the first hour has passed, then the second hour has passed, and until 12. So it has 12 hours in it. And this song that was played now with 3 voices, it's also not typical, because Poland is typically a set of traditions of monodic singing with just one line, and not building harmonies like this. But this was one of the exceptions, and the song was sung in the name of that song was sung to the deceased. It's a poem by Franciszek Karpiński from the yes, and it's so it says, you who have died, we are saying goodbye to you, and please accept the last gift that we are giving to you, which is the handful of soil that we put on your grave, from your family and from your friends. And then there is my favorite passage of all funeral songs, which says, "You return to the ground that who was your mother. She fed you before, and now she will digest you." And thus, every way that brings anyone to the world also leads them on this ridden tract, like the road that everyone goes eventually. And there are 2 more strophes, but maybe let's not go into. But this is so that you can get an image of what the lyrics say. And the song from Dobrovoda is about the wandering of the soul after the soul leaves the body. And it's also from the borderland, so there is also not only one voice, but two. Okay, thank you.
Летела душа с тела, вылетела душа с тела, на новой могиле села. Она села и плакала, она села и плакала, де я буду ночевала. Прилетает ангел с неба, прилетает ангел с неба, то тобі душа треба. Як ти ангел, ніч не треба. Як ти ангел, ніч не треба. Только спасение с неба. Ты душа сповидала, ты душа сповидала, ты душа причащала. Я ты ангел сповидала, я ты ангел сповидала, я ты ангел причащала. Пойди душа за душами, пойди душа за душами, так як місяць за зорами. Зайдеш душа ти до неба, зайдеш душа і до неба, там тобі скажу, що треба, що ти душа там робила, що ти душа там робила, що так много нагрішила.
Okay, thank you for listening to these songs. And now I'd like to pass the voice to Anja and maybe pass to this subject of contemporary phenomena in this field, like what is happening right now with those traditions and inspirations.
Thank you, Marta. It's also one more thing concerning what's going on with the body of the singing of the living is that the singing brings warmth to the face a lot, and you can, as you are using your voice, you can feel the warmth. It's not only the warmth of the breath itself, but you can sometimes feel it, like here on your lips and on your nose, more than in just sitting or talking. The singing also, because it all vibrates, the whole face and the whole head and the whole body, but you can feel it especially in your face and your chest too. So this, I think, is also an important process of embodied processing of death, because it's a reaction it's also similar to what's going on when crying. When we are crying, also the heat goes out of our heads and it all warms up. And I think that this is an important phenomenon because it's very much opposed to the reaction of freezing, for example, and clenching and keeping everything inside. So also, it's I think important to mention that those activities are not disconnected, crying and singing, and it was usually the family members were usually not involved in singing because they could not, because it's too close and it was too difficult for them to. So it was a neighborly service. Neighbors came and sang for the person they knew, but not the closest ones. Usually they would just be there among everyone, and also the songs filled the void and the space of the house, which lost one of its inhabitants. So it was a way to just go through this time, and also in terms of space, filling the space with this strong sound. And passing on to what as Anja was making the introduction, she said something about researching those traditions as they are now. Well, I don't want to say that they are alive, and I don't want to say that they are dying. And this is just a process of changes that is related, is linked to many changes in cultures, both in the city and in the rural environments. And there are, of course, the singers themselves. They have different views on that. Sometimes they would say that that this tradition is lost and that it's a shame, and that it's that everyone needs it, but people go away from this. But some would also say that this is a quote. Well, now the fashion which involved singing for the deceased has passed already. It's like it's passé. And it's also I like this attitude. I appreciate the acceptance included in it of the fact that everything changes and our lives have changed enormously between the half of the 20th century and now. So why would this not change? On the other hand, it's of course a fact that death is taboo, that death is subject to becoming a taboo in societies, and that this is part, like the vanishing of the practice of singing funeral songs is part of that. Because the situation, as we were doing research, as we were asking around 6 years ago, was that there were very few places in the east of Mazovia, because this is different. Again, now I'm speaking again about only this area, because it's a bit different in Kurpie and it's a bit different in Kaszubia. But in Eastern Mazovia now it's really not often that this singing takes place. It still happens from time to time, but it's also very different. It depends on the motivation of people in a particular village, if they keep this tradition alive or not. Sometimes it's also worth saying that singing is a considerable physical effort. So in the villages where there was only one person left singing, because no one else would take over, no one else learned how to sing, and no one else was keen on joining this leader, then they gradually stop singing because it's simply too difficult to lead the singing in one person. It's because they're, oh, this is another comment, that's the fragments that we are playing, they take a couple of minutes, but the song that takes 5 minutes, Zmarłe człowiecze, z tobą się żegnamy, it's actually literally the shortest song, and it's very exceptional because already the song with 12 hours, it has 12 strophes, and it can take, I think, 10 to 15 minutes, also depending on the tempo, which tends to be stretched. The more people join singing, the slower the singing goes. So we could hear that in the first recording, that slow manner of singing. And those songs were very long, and the melodies are also demanding. So everyone that I met as singers between their 90s even and in their 60s, even 50s, some of them, they all said that it's actually an activity for young people, not for old people, as they refer to themselves, because it's really difficult to maintain the strong sound for such a long time. When one song takes 20 minutes or half an hour, and that was a whole night of singing. But even nowadays, even to sing one song in the gathering is not so easy for people who are left alone in singing, and neighbors no longer join into singing, so it's really more difficult to sustain. So there is this, again, bodily aspect of why the tradition is not so alive as it could be, because young generations at some point stopped taking over this, as it would happen before in this intergenerational transmission. As I was told by the singers, it was usually the singers who singled, when they were singing with the community, they would single out sometimes people with strong, good voices, and they would encourage, like, attract them, like lure them to join them and go and sing together in many occasions. So the singers I met from all the generations, this is often how they began singing. It was not because they were drawn to the somehow to accompanying death, or that they were very religious. It was usually for their voices that they were noticed, and old singers took care of it, took care of the transmission. They wanted to make sure that someone comes to help. It was also described in this way, that it's good when there is a lot of people because they can help singing. So this is again one other aspect of life in small communities, where people rely strongly on helping each other, as they used to depend on each other with work that couldn't be done on just by within the family. This was the same case. Aleksandra wanted to say something about Kashubia, a contemporary situation. So please.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that Kashubia region is much different than others because the language was said to be the language. So since 2005, it's much easier to get different financial support for cultural actions, like to strengthen the folklore, for example. So we can see that there are lots of reconstruction of different cultural elements. And when, for example, Mr. Adamowicz, the president of Gdańsk, was killed, they organized, especially for him in Gdańsk, Kurowska-Susdorf, so the singing vigil. But because we are cultural minority, we are not like a ethnic group or just a group of people with a different dialect, but this is the language, and we can apply for different foundings in European Union and so on. People have bigger support to do things like supporting the songs, the vigils, but this is the reconstruction. So we forgot about we ceased at home and sing at home. It moved to chapels and it moved to a different kind of festival. So it's more like an event now, cultural event. But because, as I said, the culture is being supported as the minority group culture to protect the language, we have more options. That's what I mean. But we need to keep in mind that COVID situation actually changed everything around the world. So all the events where we need to gather people, this is very complicated. So let's have a look what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years. But also money counts here, not only tradition, love that we have to our fathers, rituals, but also money seems to be a significant factor here. Okay. Mhm.
Yes, this is an interesting perspective as well. Yes, about home vigils. Of course, now it's also very unusual for someone to take the decision of leaving the body at home, because usually it's taken to the funeral home, and funeral homes also support very strongly the common belief that it's even forbidden to keep the body at home. So people often decide to not to have the body at home. Usually, like I think 99% of the cases. Even though old people, before they pass, they are very explicit about their will to be left at home for at least some time for everyone to say goodbye. But even so, those wishes are often cannot be complied with. I would like to maybe show a little fragment of, because I haven't played any recordings from Mazovia, but on our website, Pieśni do Śmierci Project, there is a lot of recordings. And now I would like to show just a couple of maybe a minute of a recording of an example of how it sounds when intergenerational singing. Of course, this is again not the situation of transmission as it would happen. This is more the reconstruction situation, because we came we met the singers and we joined them in singing, but it's of course it will be very different if it would happen in the same village, but just sorry, I want.
I cierpię, klątwa grzechowa będzie z niej ojęta. Jedna garstka ziemi niech mi będzie święta. Niech klątwa grzechowa będzie z niej ojęta. Jedna garstka ziemi za wszystko mi stanie, za nią wieczne szczęście, wieczne królowanie. Wszyscy, co się zwiecie, przyjaciółmi mymi, rzućcie mi życzliwie każdy garstkę ziemi. Wszyscy, co się zwiecie, przyjaciółmi mymi, rzućcie mi życzliwie każdy garstkę ziemi.
Okay, thank you. There are more examples if someone is interested, and yes. So now I don't know. Do we still have time to talk about Earthly Lament. Marta, would you like to say? And I can share the screen with a photograph of the situation.
Okay, so we would like to tell you about few initiatives of reinterpretation of those traditions and adaptations to the modern to the modern situation, and one of those is Earthly Lament, an initiative that we started with Anja, that we adapted those funeral songs, the text of them, to the mourning of climate crisis and some events that were taking place in Poland, like the deforestation of the mountain forests, or the strikes of youth, the air strike, right, Anja? Could you show some pictures from this event, maybe? Because our goal was to adapt those songs so they could be a means of expression of those feeling of sorrow and mourning and the loss of control in terms of the climate crisis, and to give this form of traditional expression to those activist movements, to those protesters. So we took part in the protests in the city center of Warsaw, and we gathered people to sing together and adapted versions of the lyrics of Żegnam Cię mój świecie wesoły and few other songs that we felt were suitable for the situation. And so that was one of the occasions, and usually we invite people to sing together. We start singing, and by the moment people catch how the melody flows, we invite them to just sing with us. And we thought it could be a proposition for people who normally tend to be more conservative, and the Polish activist movement is mostly progressive leftist and is very niche group of people. So we thought maybe this alternative could be a means of expression of protests for maybe some other scope of people. So we suggested it could be a form, and we are happy to say, to announce that our form of protest is spreading Poland, because we already know of at least 3 other initiatives that asked us if they could adapt our form of protest and use our songs. So they were sung already in different places. They were sung in Gdańsk, they were sung in Poznań, they were sung in ultimately in Łysica, in Świętokrzyskie Mountains. And all those are situations where people are protesting against some for a sort of environmental damage. Yeah. So this is one of the initiatives we wanted to tell you about. And another initiative that we are looking at those days is an initiative of Anja, you can stop the sharing. Thank you. Is a pop music initiative I wanted to tell you about. The group is called Polskie Znaki, and they invited some very popular pop stars in Poland to sing the traditional songs in the modern pop adaptation. And they recently did the premiere of their first 3 songs of the first album. So I'd like to share with you this song, and because I think it is interesting that somehow the subject of death and those mournful songs are entering the mainstream, the pop music, the entertainment part. Like somehow we are able to share the experience of loss and mourning in this pop modern mainstream way. So I think it's an interesting example, and I invite you to hear a fragment of this song, and what will be the last thing we will do, because our time is already ending.
Przyjdzie, Panie, zaginąć, ratunku potrzeba, którego ja nie pragnę, jak od Ciebie z nieba. Twej się woli polecam i przyznać to muszę. Miasto wszelkiej pociechy, ciężki żal odnoszę. Wszakże ja to od Ciebie, Zbawiciela mego, przyjmuję też ochotnie z serca wesołego. Jestem jak wodna trzcina, która z wielkiej suszy, skoro lada wiatr wionie, zarazem ją skruszy.
Okay, thank you very much. This is it.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God, I could listen to so much more of what you have to say. So, well, thank you, Aleksandra, Marta, and Anja, for this amazing overview of tradition and transformance and what is happening right now, how people are trying in different ways to capture the essential values of these traditions and find new forms. Thank you so much, Marysia, for coordinating this and for the technical support. To remind you, we are all part of the Instytut Dobrej Śmierci, the Institute of a Good Death, an interdisciplinary initiative in Poland. You can find links to our website in the program of the Lifting the Lid Festival. Thanks everybody for listening and watching, and we wish you a wonderful festival and hope to be in touch with you in different ways. So thank you once again, and have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend.